They called her Silent Girl because she moved like a shadow and spoke less than a locked magazine. On the morning the wind tasted of metal, the company assembled on the ridge to watch an exercise that usually ended in coffee and bored nods. The commander, a man with a neck like orders, trained his binoculars on a target 2 valleys away and smirked. 400 meters, maybe 5, he said. Someone laughed. Someone muttered about optics. Her rifle lay across the bipod like an animal at rest. She had spent nights mapping the air, pressure gradients, thermal seams, the way dust rose from the far canyon when the sun struck a certain stone. At 4,200 meters a bullet was a small promise tossed into wind with a mind of its own. You had to persuade it. The wind at the firing point ran a crooked whisper. She adjusted for Coriolis like a cartographer. Her spotter, a lanky corporal who trusted her the way soldiers trust a compass, read the mirage through glass and fed her decimals. Elevation 3,990, dial 2 minutes left, hold low by a fist, he said, voice steady because it knew to be when everything else wanted to shatter. She exhaled in a controlled peal and let the trigger fall. The report was a distant punctuation, softer than the rustle of her coat on the ridge. Everyone's jaws tightened as they watched the far band of dust where the target waited. Time, for a beat, became slow film. The bullet was invisible. It kissed the air with a tiny, polite violation, then found the mark as if summoned by an old, accurate debt. The commander's smirk collapsed into stunned silence. His binoculars trembled. Around him bets evaporated. Men who lived to wager on everything were mute, watching a halo of dust bloom and a flag tumble in a precise way that meant exactness and audacity. Silent Girl lowered her rifle and did not smile. It wasn't hubris, it was work folded into breath. Later, when the commander climbed the ridge, his words were brittle with surprise. How? He asked. The corporal only shrugged like a man who had seen the sea and could not explain the tide. She looked at the commander and spoke, in a voice barely bigger than the wind. We read the air, she said. We listen to where it moves. The rest is patience. He studied her, the kind of look that catalogued medals and mistakes, then nodded. Respect there was a different medal, earned quietly. They told the story in laughter and reverent hush. She returned to practice. The ridge and its secrets waited like a book she hadn't finished. The shot lived in mouths and eyes, proof that precision is patient, and that sometimes the quietest voice commands the loudest answer. Months later a journalist wrote of the shot. Veterans argued over conditions, but those who'd watched only remembered how still everything became in truth. The shot still echoed in the minds of everyone on that ridge long after the dust had settled. The target, 4,200 meters away, had been nothing but a distant dot, yet Silent Girl had read it like a line of poetry. Afterward, the base buzzed with stories. Some said it was luck. Others whispered about Black Ops training, or that she was one of the Ghost Division, the unit that didn't officially exist. When the commander called her into the debrief tent, the air was tense. He was still trying to piece together how a quiet technician from logistics had outshot every marksman under his command. She stood at attention, rifle slung, face calm, eyes unreadable. Name, rank, and assignment, he said, testing her. Sergeant Ilara Voss, sir. Ballistics maintenance, forward range. He frowned. Ballistics maintenance, that's not sniper school. No, sir, she replied. But I fix what snipers break. A flicker of amusement crossed his face, but it was brief. He pushed a dossier toward her across the table. Inside were range results from every shooter that day. None came close to her precision. At 4,200 meters, the margin of error is over 3 feet. You hit dead center. I need to know how. Ilara studied him quietly before speaking. You measure distance in meters, sir. I measure it in wind shifts. He blinked. Explain. She pointed to the map on the wall behind him. There's a heat seam that runs through the canyon after 0900 hours. It bends air density just enough to drift a .408 round 6 inches right by the time it crosses Ridge 3. You don't see it unless you've spent months watching the mirage. I did. The commander stared, then leaned back. You mapped the wind. I listened to it, she corrected softly. Outside, the word had already spread. The Marines at the range had started calling her Ghost Scope. Some joked she used predictive AI in her optics, others said she'd served in foreign counterterror units before being reassigned under a new identity. None could prove it. Later that night, she returned to the ridge alone. The sky had gone violet, the desert wind humming low. She unpacked her rifle, not to fire, but to clean it, each motion slow and reverent. A small pendant hung from the stock, etched with 7 lines, Phantom 7. She touched it once, as if to honor something unseen. The wind picked up, cold and whispering, carrying with it the same silence that had followed her shot. Down in the command tent, the colonel watched the footage again, the trace barely visible even under magnification. "We're not losing her to maintenance anymore," he said finally. "Effective immediately, reassign Sergeant Voss to Advanced Recon, Sniper Unit. And somewhere on that dark ridge, Silent Girl."